Hey, what's up guys, my name is Crash, and today we're going to be going over a series I loved since I was a kid, and it still holds a place in my heart. The series is Call of Duty. I know it's fallen off over the years, but I want to go over the game that I feel deserves recognition and truly paved the path for the series. No, it's not Modern Warfare, even though that title was amazing, and no, it wasn't Black Ops 2. Even though that game was great in itself and had a lot of different unique features to it, and it definitely wasn't fucking Vanguard, so we'll throw that one away. No, the game was Call of Duty World at War. World at War came out around the time where Call of Duty games were kind of getting old to the point where no one really wanted to see World War II shooters. This comes from every company too, like Medal of Honor. No one wanted to see another World War II shooter. So Modern Warfare, of course, did really well the year before because it was something different. And then for some reason, World at War still came out, which was another World War II shooter. But honestly, it was probably the best Call of Duty I've ever played, and I really want to go over that and show you guys why I feel like this game was perfect in every sense of a way, and how it truly paved the path for different modes and different features and all that in the later date games. Like the campaign, the multiplayer, and the zombies really showed what Call of Duty could be and how it really had a great future ahead of itself at the time. So the first thing I want to go over is the campaign. I know most people don't honestly care about campaigns when it comes to Call of Duty, but if you haven't played the World at War campaign, it is honestly worth checking out. It is that amazing. Even nowadays, it's better than most campaigns that you'll get in any types of games, like the new Modern Warfare or new Vanguard. Just do not light a candle that can come near to what this campaign actually gives you for content and how rich the story is. It's honestly amazing, and it really showed how well they could come up with a story, at least Treyarch, and how it actually led to the future of other campaigns that they made, and it really shows in the later date titles like Black Ops 1 and 2, how much passion they had for the story. So let's get right into this. When you first start out the campaign, you're playing on the American side, and honestly, it has a decent intro. The American side is okay, at least in my opinion. I feel like the American side of the campaign is more of a run and gun shooter, not really much to the plot, but it's still pretty good. The maps are awesome, even the one that you start out with, the introduction is honestly amazing, and I still enjoy it till this day. So when you start the campaign, you actually play on two different sides of the war. The first one is the American side, and this is more of a run and guns type style, and it's honestly really fun, and it gives you a whole bunch of unique different weapons that you get to use while you fight against the Japanese, and they show different tactics and stuff of the enemies, which we'll be going over certain levels of each. The other side of it though is the Russian side, and honestly this is my personal favorite side of the game, because honestly the Russian campaign has such a good plot, and it honestly has some of the best gameplay I've had in a Call of Duty campaign, and it's so amazing how they put it all together and made it such an amazing product. So how does the game begin? The first level is Semper Fi. This mission starts you as a captive in the war, so you are in a POW camp with the rest of your squad. This really shows an interesting perspective of how brutal war can be at certain times. The Japanese soldiers, literally right in front of your character, end up murdering the rest of your squad, and right before they're about to stab you and kill you as well, you end up getting saved by Corporal Roebuck and Sergeant Sullivan. After they save you, it becomes kind of like a Michael Bay movie. The mission is amazing. You end up heading out of the camp and everything around you starts exploding. So I know some people wouldn't be all too interested in that, but they actually add some really interesting details to this. Aside from just the explosions, there's quiet times and interesting dialogue throughout. The most interesting part though, at least in my opinion, is the Japanese tactics during their battles. And this goes for every single level when you're playing against the Japanese soldiers. They put so much effort into making them a lot more interesting than just some random soldiers running at you. I feel like with newer Call of Duties, the way that they try to add challenge now is adding armor, but in the old ones they added some unique details like this. You end up heading into a camp full of dead Japanese soldiers. The rest of your squad is, of course, confused because they're like, whose squad went through and wiped these guys out before we got here? It was actually no one. They are actually alive, and it was like an ambush that was set up by the Japanese soldiers, which makes it so much more interesting than just, oh, they're all dead, some other squad went through. It shows the different types of tactics the Japanese had to use to even win certain gunfights. So you all end up getting flashbanged, and then they run at you with their bayonets and stab, well, most of your squad, and you end up having to take them out and charge into the next room. It's a great way of showing how interesting you can make battles. Even though the levels aren't all too interesting, you can make them exciting by adding these unique features to the side, like exploding buildings, burning people, and a whole bunch of different ambushes and stuff that makes it really interesting. Not only did they have the flashbang part, they also had little traps around the map that can grab your soldiers, pull them up, and blow them the hell up. It's honestly really cool, and I really enjoy that feature. And I wish other Call of Duty games would go into this type of detail. Like, even in the next mission, Little Resistance, it kind of shows that type of side as well. It kind of shows how gruesome it could be during the war. You end up being at a beachhead, and when you're going up to the beachhead, your boat ends up getting stuck, and you just watch the person right beside you get his head literally blown off. It is awesome. I know most people can't like handle the gruesome parts of this game, but honestly, I think the brutality of the game really conveys how bad war can be, and it makes it interesting. You can turn off that feature if you don't want to see someone's brains get blown out of their head. I understand some people can't stomach that type of stuff, but I feel like it adds to the story and makes you feel like, damn, this is what war is truly like. Like, anything can happen. Everyone has the same type of luck, so you can end up being unlucky just like the person right beside you and get your brains blown up at any time. But let's get into the Russian side of the campaign. Honestly, the first level of the Russian side is probably my personal favorite campaign level in any Call of Duty I've ever played. It's called Vendetta. This mission starts out with you guys in a fountain, and there's a whole bunch of German soldiers walking throughout the fountain, murdering pretty much all the injured that are inside the fountain still alive. Your character lays still enough to pretend that you are dead, and it's honestly terrifying seeing all the soldiers and the tanks drive by you, and it gives you such a bleak thought of like, damn, what are you supposed to do against all this? This is too much to deal with. Like, how are you supposed to win this battle? But after the Germans end up getting out of the fountain, you end up moving again. And this is where you meet probably my personal favorite character as well, Reznov. Reznov is probably one of the best written characters that Call of Duty has ever had, and I can see why they added him to Black Ops 1 and 2, and even feature him in other Call of Duties with like minor hints and stuff like that. It makes sense why they do it. He's just that well written. When you first meet Reznov, he is a bit of a hard ass, but that makes sense. We just watched a whole bunch of people around you just get wiped the hell out in matters of seconds, and you watch the injured get, shot to death. But this is where the interesting part goes in. So when you go around the fountain with Reznov, this is where he gives you his sniper, and he starts telling you about a target that he's trying to capture. Well, by capture, I mean murder. So pretty much this whole level is you following this person and trying to kill him. Now, what makes this level so interesting is you're not allowed to shoot unless the planes are going by, because the sound of the weapon going off will actually alert other enemies. So during the stealth of this level, you need to be pristine with your timing of shooting and stuff. Like, you have to be ready to attack at these set times, or you can end up screwing up the level, which I honestly think is a great idea for at least the beginning of the level. But later on, it ends up being a little bit easier to go through without any type of repercussions for doing so. But it's a great way of introducing how the stealth mechanics work. So while you're going through the city with Reznov, you end up in a bar after you try to sneak away from a whole bunch of enemies, and then a sniper ends up trying to shoot you. And this is another cool, interesting little tidbit thing. It's not all too much to the story, but it makes it interesting. This sniper alone has more uniqueness to it than most enemies in any other COD campaign. This guy not only puts up little helmets that you can shoot that are fake, that aren't actually him, but he also like tries to trick you into shooting at him, and he moves around, so it's harder to hit him. He's honestly a great like character, even though he's not a true character. Like pretty much you end up onto a second floor and you're trying to snipe him, and Reznov keeps trying to get him to point out and snipe at you, so you have to be ready to hit your shot on him. And this can take you a couple tries depending on what difficulty you are playing. But honestly, I think they made this part so good just because of like all the uniqueness to the sniper. But after you take out the sniper, this is where more of the interesting stuff happens as well. So when you're heading out, you end up heading downstairs, and you see a whole bunch of soldiers like going past you. And then a clock goes off, and it pretty much gives away your spot. And then they start burning your building, and you run the hell out. This is where you see that Reznov actually cares about, like, you know, the rest of the Russian soldiers. He's not just some hard ass that doesn't care, because your character ends up getting smushed by a wood board, and he comes back for you and lifts it off of you, and then you guys run out of the building together. Now, this also leads to another interesting part. After you get rescued by a little Russian squad, you end up at the end of the level, and you end up having to snipe your target. Reznov at this point in time, while your Russian soldiers give you a bit of a distraction, tells you they've already played their part. They're going to die. There's nothing we can do about that. So we pretty much just have to let our Russian army get wiped out. Which sucks, but it truly shows how great of a leader he is, and like how sacrifices sometimes need to be made for the, like, you know, the advancement of the battles, and like how to lead to victory of the war. So you end up sniping the general, and then that's how the mission ends. You end up jumping out of a window, and so does he, and then you guys don't see each other for a long time, which leads into the next level. This level is called Their Land, Their People. This mission is honestly amazing as well, just like the rest of the campaign. This level starts out with you playing as Dmitri again, and you're actually captive of the German army. A little bit of punching in the face and a little bit more of interrogation later, the Russians end up blowing through the wall, and you get to see Reznov again. He ends up mowing down the rest of the Germans that are in there, and this leads into actually one of the more interesting devices of the game. Not only do you get to meet a new character, his name is Chernov, which is also the skin for Nikolai, if you know him from the other Call of Duty zombie maps and stuff like that. So when you get to this part, you get to decide if you want to shoot the people that are on the ground or not. I know this sounds like it's not like anything interesting, like what does that mean? But it actually adds to the ending of the campaign, depending on what you decide to do. So if you end up shooting them, it actually gives you a negative light in Chernov's eyes, which he will write down in his journal that you always see when you see his character. And if you decide not to shoot them, it shows that you're merciful. So that means that he will write positively about you in his journal. It's an honestly interesting idea, and it plays a little bit more of a role. Like throughout the campaign, there's a couple other decisions that you get to make, and each and every time he will decide if it was a good or bad decision. And by the end of it, either he says you're an evil person that does not deserve praise, or he calls you a hero, or he says you're kind of in the middle, depending on what decisions you have made throughout the campaign. But aside from that, the other thing that you really get to see, which is honestly interesting, and this will play throughout the rest of the Russian missions, even like Blood Iron and Ring of Steel, like those ones, this will show that throughout the rest of the campaign, the Russians end up annihilating the Germans throughout each and every battle. I feel like the best one that shows off this type of like brutality and gruesomeness is Eviction. Let's talk about that level. So when you get to Eviction, you end up seeing a captive German soldier that you ended up capturing. And instead of being like the moral compass for the Russian soldiers, they end up having an argument over if he should live or he should die. One Russian soldier says they can help them in the war, so why would you shoot him? And the other one's like, okay, let's kill him. We don't need him. He's pretty much a disgrace, and we need to kill him. And they end up arguing for a little bit, and then the other one pulls out his gun and shoots him in the face. And he says, no Germans will pretty much survive. And that's the treatment that they will get. Now, this shows like an interesting light to the Russian side, and you can't really like judge them on it, but you can as well. Just because what happened in Stalingrad, which is the first mission that you get to meet them in Vendetta, it really showed that the Germans did not care. They did not show mercy. They would just kill any Russian soldiers. So as pretty much the progression of the Russians, they felt the same way. And if you look up the history of World War II, you would see kind of why they would have that type of brutality mindset. By the casualty number that the Russians had was astronomical compared to any other country at the time, which is an interesting way of looking at it. And it shows why they, wouldn't care that much for the Germans, mostly because of how much they lost throughout, the war. But let's get it back onto the American campaign a little bit. So when we're getting back onto the American campaign, there's not much to the levels, like I said. Like, most of them are running gun and using a flamethrower, which is alright. I wish they would have played a bit more into the American side like they did with the Russians. They really showed how the Russians could be brutal, same with the Germans and the Japanese, but they never truly showed how the Americans would be during war. I guess the flamethrower part was supposed to show how gruesome our tactics were and what type of weapons we would use were kind of inhumane, but I wish they would have showed a bit more than just that, maybe a body grabbing you and that was burning, just to show that this is not to be used. This is too gruesome, and it leads to some of the most gruesome types of deaths that no one actually deserves. But aside from that, I think the campaign, at least on the American side, was great, but I wish they would have put a little bit more time into it aside from it being run and gun. But don't get me wrong, the run and gun part of it is amazing. But there is one level that did add some keynote details that are actually pretty cool, and that is on Breaking Point. This level is the last level of the American side, and it shows pretty much the end of the war in Japan, quote unquote. You start the level out with no ammo, and you end up going to a package to pick up ammo, and you end up getting hit by a mortar team and running into trenches. Now, I feel I'm not sure if I'm taking this correctly, but when you get into the trench or the dugout, you end up seeing the Japanese soldiers talking, and I feel it shows that the Japanese soldiers at this point in time were a bit more disorganized, which I thought was an interesting detail to show, and showed that there really was no hope for them to win the war at this point in time. So when you go through the trench and you kill them and, go throughout the rest of the mission, this is where one of the other key details I wish they would have showed a little bit more of throughout the campaign. And that is when you end up finding a whole bunch of Japanese soldiers that surrender to you, and they end up attacking you right when you let your guard down. And you get to decide if you want to save Roebuck or another soldier. And this doesn't really make much of a difference throughout the story or make a drastic change to the ending event, but you get to decide who you save. I saved Roebuck almost 100% of the time, and the other guy dies, which is sad, but I feel it showed that the Japanese soldiers were willing to do anything to win for their country, which I wish they would have went a little bit more into. I don't remember from the one mission Black Cats if they had kamikaze bombers, but I feel that would have been an interesting way of showing that their loyalty towards their country is more than you would expect, which is a great way of showing it. At least in this level, they did a great job showing that they are willing to even blow themselves up to take out the enemy, to win the objective, pretty much. But near the end of this level, you end up taking out the two last little castles, and you end up looking at the other soldier's dog tag and pretty much regret that you saved Roebuck instead. And it's the same way if you save the other soldier. It's kind of like a regret that you didn't save Roebuck. And there is no clear good choice here. Like, you had another soldier die no matter what. So, like, there's going to be some type of regret that you will have. So let's get back onto the Russian side of the campaign. There's only 2 other levels that are left to the campaign, and honestly, they're almost just as great as Vendetta, which is the Heart of the Reich and Downfall. Before we get into this, on a previous level, Eviction, you end up in a subway, and this is pretty much a trap from the German forces, which actually happened in real life. They ended up flooding the subways where you guys are at. And after you guys get flooded out, you end up into the level, the Heart of the Reich. And this is where Chernov and Reznov have a conversation about how Chernov needs to stop writing in the stupid journal. No one's gonna read it, and he pretty much was just sitting all over him, telling him, "You're just wasting your time. No one cares about this. This is fucking war. What is that journal going to do for us?" Pretty much, which I think is an interesting perspective, showing his frustration, mostly because, look at all the shit that's happening around them. It makes sense why they would be stressed out or even angry with each other or with the other side of the country, I guess. But it's really interesting. But throughout this level, you end up seeing a lot of wounded German soldiers fighting you, which is an awesome idea. They start showing that they're so weak at this point. They have no soldiers truly left, so they're just sending out whatever forces they have left around the country. And at this point in time, they actually start showing people getting hanged and stuff from the German side because they are quote-unquote traitors because they didn't want to fight in the war anymore. And honestly, this is such great storytelling. Even without saying it, it's interesting. It makes you feel like you're there and there is something going on, and it's honestly set up so great. But throughout this level, you end up taking out a couple flak cannons and stuff on your way to pretty much the theater, and that leads to the next level, which is Downfall. But after you take out a couple flak cannons, you end up heading up the stairs to get to it. And at this point in time, Chernov ends up getting burned alive. And after he gets burned alive, Reznov ends up killing the German soldier that ends up burning him. And then he pretty much says a couple last words to Chernov, which is, "Someone needs to read this," which he's talking about his journal. And I really love that part because it shows that he still had compassion for his soldiers, and he really did care about Chernov. Even though he said he doesn't care about this journal, no one's going to read it, he truly just was, upset at the time. And I love that last little conveying part. And that leads into Chernov deciding what type of person you are. The last letter is read to you on Downfall, which, depending on how you were as a person throughout the campaign, decides on what he ends up writing about you.
Reznov told tales of a hero, someone we should all aspire to be like. At times, I have seen him show mercy, but at others act with complete brutality. I do not understand him. Perhaps heroes need not question their actions.
And Downfall. This mission is awesome. So throughout this mission, you just have a beautiful theater music playing in the background while you're running through, killing the last couple German soldiers that truly don't stand a chance. That, like I said, they're on their last leg. They're all wounded. You can even see the bandages on the soldiers and stuff that are charging at you because they truly didn't have anyone left. Even in the actual war, they had children and stuff fighting at this point in time. There was no chance to be have this turn at any point in time. They were outnumbered and they weren't ready for this final battle. But this mission was set up great. After you take out a whole bunch of people throughout the theater, you even see more brutality from the Russian soldiers. You can look through doors and you can see them mowing down German soldiers that are literally surrendering and beating them to death. They even shut the door on you on the one, and they're literally just mowing them down. They're acting like it's a hunt at this point. They're like rabid dogs and they're just shooting them. And I love that storytelling, and it shows you how the war slowly progressed and shows how brutal humans can be towards each other when it really gets down to it. and it shows how gruesome some people are, like, and when they truly can show how they are as a person. But throughout, like, fighting throughout the stairs and killing a whole bunch of enemies, you end up at the top floor, and the flag bearer ends up getting shot, and you pick it up and you bring it to the end. And before you get there, you end up getting shot by a German soldier that's hiding, and Reznov comes in to save the day. After he saves you, he ends up helping you carry the flag to the end to post it at the top. And I honestly thought this was amazing. It was really cool, and it was a great way of ending the story. And before you wonder how does the Japanese side get wrapped up, they end up wrapping it up in a cutscene, and I think it was done pretty well, talking about how the nukes went off, and that's how, the war ended in Japan as well, because the German side of the war ended before the Japanese side. So it was great that they were able to wrap up both sides by the end of it. So overall, the story of World at War is honestly an amazing experience, and I truly recommend for anyone to go and check this out, even if they haven't yet. And there's a lot of reasons why to that, like the differing story depending on how you decide to end the Russian campaign is honestly a great plus, and you don't really see that in a lot of Call of Duty games nowadays. I think Treyarch is usually the only one that truly has like different endings and stuff, with even the newest Cold War having a different ending depending on how you play throughout the campaign. But it's usually just Treyarch that does that stuff, and honestly adds a little bit more flavor to the mode, and I'm truly grateful for it, and I wish other Call of Duty games would follow in this path, but it's usually just Treyarch. But it's honestly a great experience for anyone that is looking for it. The only other thing I would really say about the campaign is little nitpicks, like maybe the American side needed to get fleshed out a little bit more with at least the plot, but the gameplay was all there, and I feel like it had the better gameplay out of the two, even though the Russian side was still as fun, at least in my opinion. But let's get into probably one of my favorite modes that are in every Call of Duty game, at least nowadays, and it really doesn't need no introduction. It's zombies. Zombies came in, and it honestly was just a breath of fresh air from Call of Duty, with every Call of Duty being more of just like a shooter where you run around killing people in multiplayer or playing through a simple campaign. This was the first time that they innovated and added something that was completely different, that was kind of out of their comfort zone, it seems. And it really worked out in their favor. I'm pretty sure from what I've read back in the day, this was more just a mess around mode and let the devs have fun. And I wish that they would do this more often. I know they did that kind of with Extinction and stuff when that came out in Call of Duty Ghosts, but truly when they have like the time and effort to put into a different type of mode, it seems to work out in their favor, because this was amazing. Even Extinction in its own right had its little quirks to it that made it a little bit more interesting than other modes. But you can't really top zombies, and that's the issue that I think Extinction had. So what makes zombies so special? Zombies is, just a generic round-based mode. At least it was back in the day. Nowadays, it's become a little bit different. Now it has like objective modes and stuff, which isn't all too great. I honestly hate that type of stuff. I enjoyed what the original had at the time, and it really had that charm because of it. So what made it so special? Let's start with Knock Their Tone. Of course, the first map. It was so simple at the time, but it had a lot of unique features to it that made the mode enjoyable enough to go back to. And that starts with just the wall buys, the rebuilding of barricades, and the defense around waves. There was literally nothing really much to it. It just had a little bit of an Easter egg with like music and stuff, and then you just use zombies. But it was fun. That's all that really mattered. They didn't need anything else to make the mode better. But they added more that made it honestly perfect. The only other thing that they really had on the first map is the mystery box, and this was a game staple. Like, every zombie map at least has to have some form of mystery box, or it just wouldn't feel right. At least that's how I see it. The only other little thing that they added during this time was, you know, the double points, insta-kill, and all that. And they didn't even have a picture of it at the time back in Noct. They actually just had a little timer, and it just said what you had, which was insta-kill, 30 seconds, double points, and then 30 seconds. It was kind of cool. And it shows that the mode was kind of in like a work in progress mode, and they weren't really looking to make it more than what it was. But then when Verrückt came out is truly where it started to shine. Verrückt was truly a great map, and honestly, I feel like it is the staple map for World at War, at least in my opinion. I know most people will say that's Der Riese, but personally, I always had like a huge place in my heart for Verrückt, just because this map was always scary to me, and I always ended up getting off because of how creepy it was, because of all the different little things that you can do on it. Like, if you press on the machine, it would like scream at you, stuff like that. I know the map is a bit basic. When you look at it, you actually find out this is a multiplayer map and also a campaign map. If you play through the campaign level, you'll kind of notice the similarities, at least when you play through it. It's fine to me though, because the map truly feels great for zombies. And it honestly added a lot of great things that we still see today. And these are some of them. The mystery box can move now. The mystery box in Noct was stuck in one basic spot and didn't really move around all too much. And that was completely fine, at least in my opinion. It didn't really have to have a movement to it. And I don't really mind how it was set up, at least in this. It also added the new pictures to the insta-kill and double points. So you can finally see like a little feature where at the bottom it shows like a skull emoji, or, you know, the double point screen. So you know what you have, and it starts blinking when you're getting close to it being done. And I really enjoyed that, and it shows that they were making a little bit of like innovations to it. And I enjoy that they never updated Noct, so it still has the basic 30-second double point and the 30-second insta-kill, which is honestly kind of funny, and I really enjoy that. The only other thing that they really added to zombies around the time was perk machines. Now, these were amazing. When you get to a certain room, you end up turning on the power. That's another thing that they decided to add. After you turn on the power, you can start using the 4 perks that initially started with this game, which are Double Tap, Quick Revive, Sleight of Hand, and Juggernaut. By sleight of hand, I mean speed cola. I don't know why, but I always end up calling it that. But it was really cool seeing that they honestly had some amazing ideas at the time. And it's so crazy to me that this is the map that truly started all the perks and stuff and added so much like life to the mode. Without these perks, I feel like truly Call of Duty Zombies would have died after Noct, or even after the secondary map, if they didn't come up with an idea that could actually fill out the area that is kind of missing. And I'm really happy they were able to come up with something for it. And it's the same thing with Der Riese, with probably the most major thing that needed to be done, and I'm happy they were able to find this out. So what did Der Riese add that was so special? It was the Pack-a-Punch machine. Honestly, without this, I feel like this mode would be a little bit more empty, more than you think it would be. Like, if it was gone, you would truly feel like something was missing. And I'm happy they were able to come up with this idea. The Pack-a-Punch machine just pretty much upgrades all the weapons so that you can get to higher rounds. I know it's something that's really basic, but it really is that fun. It adds little camos to your weapons, so it makes you want to go through and play over and over again and see what type of camos that you can get on your weapon. And it was just kind of cool. It was just a thing that was done to the side. If you wanted to go for higher rounds, you had that on the side. Even if you're going for like basic rounds and stuff like that, it's there for you as well. And you can tell this map was a fan favorite because of how many times it has come back over the years. I think it's been in BO3, it's been in Black Ops 1. It's honestly insane how many times this map has been revamped and brought back. And I'm really happy that they keep bringing it back just to show people this is where truly a lot of people say Call of Duty Zombies started. The Pack-a-Punch machine, aside from that, the other features that they decided to add was you can now go through like a teleporter and like spawn back into spawn. It's pretty cool. It's something really basic, but I really enjoyed that. And I like that they added so many different little things each and every map. I'm not going to forget about Shinonuma. I know a lot of people really enjoyed that map. The only thing they really truly added there was the perk machines can move around, but that never really showed up in any other map, so I didn't really see a reason to highlight that. The traps and stuff that were in that map were really cool, though, like the lumber log and stuff like that. And that is another map that usually makes a huge come around and pops up in a couple other zombie games, like the new Vanguard. No one wants to touch that fucking game, though. Aside from that, they really showed that the mode is here to stay, and what's interesting enough, back in the day, if you didn't know, Kino was supposed to drop out on World at War, but they decided to push it back and put it on Black Ops 1, which is an interesting idea. You wouldn't expect them to do that, but I'm guessing because they, have time crunches, and they were like, okay, you need to get this done by this point in time, and they weren't able to get it done by that, specific time, so they were like, okay, that will be the launch map for the next game. The only other thing that they decided to add around this time is the Wonder Waffle. That is the first time they added a quote-unquote Easter egg weapon. The ray gun is technically an Easter egg weapon, I guess, from back in the day, or I mean wonder weapon, whatever you want to call it. But the Wonder Waffle was an interesting little weapon, and I wish they would show it off in more maps. I know they're bringing it back in a couple new maps, not like in the new Call of Duty, but in prior ones, we've at least been able to see it a couple more times, which I'm really happy about because it's honestly a cool weapon, and it really shows where, the beginning of Call of Duty started and how cool it was. I mean, they showed it off even in the new Black Ops 6 trailer, which was awesome. I wasn't expecting to see it. But overall, how is the mode? The mode is honestly perfect, and the way they started it was just great. And it showed that they were ready to bring it into a new generation and show off the mode in Black Ops 1. They probably didn't expect to get it as far as they did. I'm guessing they thought after Black Ops 1 it would be done, it was just one of those modes that were thrown to the side. But it truly ended up being a staple. Mostly because even in Reese, this is the first time you get to meet Nikolai, Dempsey, Takio, and, of course, Richtofen. It's insane to me that this is the game that pretty much started it all. Started the whole plot. It even had the first Easter egg on this map with the hide and seek. It's honestly insane to me that this is how zombies ended up starting and how far it has gotten. It's honestly gotten to the point where I don't even understand the fucking plot. There's too much shit going on. But even at the time, it was at least simple enough to understand. There was even radios you can listen to and get a little bit more story to it. And I truly feel like this mode was just amazing, and it just blows any other mode out of the water, at least in my opinion, when it comes to Call of Duty. But I guess it's time to get into the last mode, which is multiplayer. Multiplayer in this game is fucking awesome, just like any other Call of Duty. Anytime I play any COD, even if the campaign is shit or the zombies is shit, usually I can have a somewhat decent time with the multiplayer, and this game is no exception. This game has an amazing fucking multiplayer. I wish it was good as it was back in the day. Back when it first came out, it was truly a great mode. But the game is honestly plagued with modders, and I want to go over that real quick. I will give a warning for people that are playing on PC. From what I've read, there is people that will grab your IP or even somehow give you a virus. And I do want to give that disclaimer out before we get into this, because if you end up getting hit by this, I don't want you guys to, take the chance to go into a multiplayer map and then getting your IP grabbed or whatever ends up happening. I know that's like a basic thing that usually happens when you're playing a decent amount of games like GTA. Anytime you get on that game, you have a chance of some random motherfucker just writing your IP in chat and saying, hey, I know where you live, by the way. I don't know why I put it in there, but at least I know where you live. So that's kind of cool. It's pretty much just like a basic thing that happens with any older game. Usually people just grab your IP for no apparent reason, or you're just beating their ass so they get pissed, and then you end up seeing that as well. But yeah, let's get into the actual conversation of the multiplayer. The multiplayer is pretty good. It has the same basic setup as the Modern Warfare, the game prior to it. There's 3 kill streaks and, the custom classes. This one was a little bit more interesting though. There is no camos and stuff for your guns, so every gun looks the exact same. But I'm honestly fine with that. There is attachments though, so you can add some unique spices to your weapon to make them exciting. But when it comes to like camos and stuff, they were like, that's a no-go. And I'm honestly fine with that because, it makes the guns actually look pretty nice by just having them look basic. I know with like newer multiplayer games, it makes it a little bit more exciting to spice up your weapon, but for a World War II shooter, it looks completely fine just using the basic look of the weapon, at least in my opinion. But how are the maps and stuff? The maps of this game, honestly, there is a lot of great ones. Like, everyone knows about Dome. Not the Modern Warfare one. Of course, there's 2 different types of domes when it comes to Call of Duty. But, the one up in the theater. That one is honestly one of the best maps. Same with the hangar one. I really enjoyed that one. And the same one that, Varuk takes place in. It's another great map, at least in my opinion. It's really interesting how most of the maps that you end up playing in this game are from the campaign, or I've been using zombies. It's interesting, it's cool, and I'm personally fine with it. And most of the maps actually work pretty well, like from the campaign to multiplayer, from like the transition. They honestly are perfectly fine, and they work well. And there's a whole bunch of other maps they came up with themselves and put into the game, which are honestly still as great as you would expect. But most of them are just campaign maps, just transferred. The only other special things that they kind of added during this time is like tanks and stuff into the multiplayer. I know that's not new to Call of Duty multiplayer. At least it was like cars and stuff in like Call of Duty 2 and stuff like that. But they had tanks and stuff that you could drive around and kill enemies with. And it was pretty fun. It's pretty gory on the multiplayer as well. If you use like shotguns or explosives and stuff, you can still blow people the hell up. So their body parts will actually like fly anywhere. It's really cool, and I'm happy that they didn't just make it a campaign-centric thing. And I know it's not in every COD, but I like when that feature shows up and, it's like a big thing for them. It makes the game feel a little bit more realistic, mostly when you throw a grenade at a guy. He doesn't just blow away and then he's just fine after, like he's just laying on the ground taking a nap. But no, his whole body will, get ripped to shreds. They've kind of played into the more cartoony aspect, at least over the years, it seems like. More like unserious, and it seems like they're trying to go for a lower than rated M type of vibe for Call of Duty nowadays. Like, with like adding like paintball and stuff instead of like actual blood and stuff. I know it's personally fine with me. I don't really care, as long as I can turn that type of stuff off, but it shows that Call of Duty is truly trying to normalize itself a little bit more so that it can get into easier audience. But I enjoyed how this game didn't really try to do that. It had a serious atmosphere, even campaign, multiplayer, zombies. All of them were really serious, and it really played into the advantage of this game. And that's why I truly feel like it ends up being a close contender, if not better than what the original Modern Warfare was. But this is probably around the time I'm going to start wrapping this up. So the multiplayer, truly, I have no words of actually explaining how great it was. It's hard to say nowadays just because of, what it is now. It's mostly just bot lobbies or modded, which really sucks because it truly had a great beginning, and I truly wish I could have showed you how it was back in the day, but it's honestly impossible to do so. Even if I go and play this on the 360 or PS3, you're not gonna truly understand how great this game was, just because of all the modding and stuff like that has truly plagued the game to the point where you really can't find a basic map anymore, which really sucks because I really wish I could have had some type of way of showing you how it truly was back in the day. But aside from that, the multiplayer is still really great, even with the modders and stuff. I still can find fun in it. It's just not as great as it used to be, just because of all the different type of stuff people have been doing with it. Just I don't want to float around the map like I'm playing Advanced Warfare. I'm playing a World War II shooter, and I don't want to fight against bots. I really want to play against players that are truly trying to have the same experience as me, but it seems like you can't really find that much anymore. But the zombies is still as great as ever. Like I said, with warning signs, try not to play with that many random players, mostly because most of them are untrustworthy at this point in time, which really sucks because there is still an amazing community that plays this game. And I don't want to bash on them because they truly didn't do anything wrong. It's more of just like the off people that like to do random stuff like grab IPs, give you viruses, etc. You're always going to find that when you're on multiplayer or even just on any type of online forum, which really sucks. But aside from that, the zombies is just great. If you haven't played through the original maps, I would give them just a test drive. The game's usually $20. It goes on sale a lot, so you can just wait for like a decent Steam sale or just buy it on console and give it a shot from there. It's honestly a great experience, and you're probably going to find one of the best zombie experiences that you'll ever be able to go through. But the last thing I really want to talk about is campaign. The only little feature I didn't really talk about back when I was going through the review is the split screen. That's another thing that's kind of cool. If you want to play like a really casual, like run and gun through campaign, it's really fun to play with your friends. And there's even like a point system that you can go through, and you get like points from killing enemies. And you kind of like compete with your teammate, and it's pretty fun. The campaign still holds up really well. The cutscenes are amazing. It actually shows real life events. So like every cutscene, it has like actual people like talking about real events that were really exciting and really like shaped the war, which is awesome. I wish they would do this more often. I know they talk about it in like the cutscenes nowadays, but I really liked when they showed like pictures and the actual reenactments of like what's going on in history. It was really fun and I really enjoyed it. I wish they would do this more often. I'm hoping Black Ops 6 will kind of follow in that route, but by the guesses, it's not going to have anything to do with real life like conflicts and stuff, which kind of sucks, but I'm fine with that. But the game overall is still really great, and if you guys can find it on a cheap deal, I would personally say go ahead and go out and go buy it still. It still has a great community. It still has a great multiplayer. It still has great zombies, and it still has a great campaign. I really can't put it into words how great this game is. I really can just use whatever positive wording that I can, but there's truly no way of defining how great the game is. But that's probably going to wrap it up for me, guys. If you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you leave a like and a sub. If you guys have a suggestion for anything else to check out, make sure to leave them down in the comments down below, and I'll make sure to check it out as quick as possible. And I'll see you guys next time. Probably on Towerborn or Fable. One or the other. We'll see. But see ya.